It was winter in 1944, but it wasn't the cold that froze Illy's soul that day. It was the silence. Silence, so heavy it made the air taste metallic. Around him, the snow-covered train tracks of Auschwitz stretched like veins into the heart of hell. The cattle car had stopped. Doors creaked open. Guards shouted in German, their words slicing the stillness like razors. Ellie was just 15, but childhood had already ended hours ago. Not long before that ride, he'd still been a boy who believed the world made sense. A boy of books, a boy of questions, a boy who prayed with his whole heart, waiting for God to answer. But on that platform, in that bitter cold, the only thing that answered him was a wall of smoke rising from the chimneys. And the smell. The smell no one would talk about, yet no one could escape. The smell of burning flesh. That was the first thing Auschwitz gave Elie Wiesel. The last thing it took was everything else. But before we get there, we have to go back to where the silence hadn't arrived yet, to the place where innocence once lived. Sighet, Romania, 1930s. Elie Wiesel was born in a quiet little town tucked into the Carpathian Mountains, a town filled with laughter, bustling markets, and the timeless rhythm of tradition. His family was deeply religious. Every morning, the young Eliezer would rise early to study Torah, his eyes dancing across sacred text by candlelight. His father, a respected grocer and a man of reason, taught him to think. His mother, gentle and nurturing, taught him to feel. Elie's world was small, but it was full, full of books, full of faith, full of questions. He often asked, "Why do we suffer?" The rabbis would say, "Suffering brings us closer to God." But Elie wanted more. He wanted answers, not riddles. He began studying the Kabbalah, the ancient Jewish mysticism. Not an easy task for a boy of 12, but Elie had something most children didn't have, a hunger that went deeper than food, a thirst that no water could quench, a thirst for meaning, a thirst that would be tested in the fires to come. The cracks in the wall. The first sign that the world outside was changing came with whispers. Whispers of Hitler, of laws, of yellow stars, of Jews disappearing from other towns. But Sighet felt safe. It always had. Even when Elie's beloved teacher, Moshe the Beetle, vanished one day, only to return months later, trembling, broken, and full of horror. He warned them, "They're killing Jews. I saw it. I escaped. Please listen to me." But no one did. They said, "He's just a poor beggar. He's gone mad." Even Elie doubted, because denial is easier than despair. And besides, how could something so monstrous happen in a world where God existed? How could something so evil be real? But evil doesn't ask for permission. It comes when you least expect it. In spring of 1944, the Nazis invaded Hungary. Sighet, once a sleepy town, became a cage overnight. First came the edicts. Jews had to wear yellow stars. Then came the curfews. Then the ghettos. And finally, the trains. The ride into darkness. Elie remembered the train, the way it moaned like a dying animal as it tore through the mountains. 80 people crammed into a cattle car meant for 8 horses. No food, no water, no air, only fear. And the screams of a woman named Madame Schechter, who kept yelling, "Fire! I see fire!" They thought she was mad until they saw the flames. Auschwitz. Hell had an address, and they had arrived. There are places on this earth that defy description. Auschwitz was one of them. The gates loomed high above them, bearing the lie that still echoes in history. Arbeit macht frei. Work will set you free. But no one would be free here. As soon as Ellie stepped off the train, the rhythm of death took over. Shouts in German, barking dogs, beatings, whips, men on one side, women on the other. Ellie's mother and little sister Tzipporah vanished into the crowd. He never saw them again. He wanted to run after them, to scream, to fight, but his father's hand gripped his wrist. Tight, Elie would later write, as if to say, I'm here. I won't let you go. They were shoved into a line. Ahead of them stood a man in a crisp uniform, casually pointing left or right. Left meant death. Right meant forced labor. The man's name was Dr. Josef Mengele. Elie lied and said he was 18. His father said he was 40. It saved their lives. For now. The smell of ash. They were marched past the flames, past the chimneys, past the ash that fell like gray snowflakes on their shoulders. That night, Elie saw children being thrown into a pit of fire, babies, and no one screamed, no one fought, because fear had crushed their souls. Elie whispered to himself, Never shall I forget that night, the first night in camp which has turned my life into one long night. That was the night Elie Wiesel stopped being a boy and God, if he was still watching, stopped being silent. The next day they were stripped, shaved, beaten, deloused, and tattooed. Eliezer Wiesel ceased to exist. He was now A77113. That number would become his name. He would carry it not just on his arm, but in his bones, in his breath, in every memory. From Auschwitz, he was transferred to a subcamp called Buna, where the real work began. He toiled in a warehouse sorting electrical parts. Heavy labor, cold hands, empty stomach. Every day he watched others collapse. Every day he watched the guards laugh. Sometimes they hanged prisoners in front of them, boys, men, old rabbis. One day a child was hanged. The noose swung gently, the boy's body too light to die quickly. Someone behind Elie whispered, Where is God now? And Elie answered inside himself, Where is he? Here he is, hanging here on this gallows. Faith in ashes. Elie had once been a boy of prayer. Now he was a shadow of a soul. He stopped fasting on holy days. He stopped whispering to the sky. He stopped believing that suffering had a purpose. In the place of God, there was only survival. You stole bread or you starved. You betrayed your neighbor or you froze. Humanity was unraveling, and in the absence of law, instinct ruled. He began to see things in people he never thought possible: cruelty from the kind, silence from the righteous, madness from the sane, but also small sparks, a crust of bread handed quietly, a hand on the shoulder when someone cried, a prayer spoken not to God, but to memory. Because if they forgot who they were, they'd truly be dead. A father and his son. In that place, Elie had only one anchor, his father, Shlomo. They slept next to each other, shared what little food they had, whispered when the guards weren't looking. Sometimes Elie wanted to give up, but his father's voice would pull him back. And sometimes it was the other way around. When one stumbled, the other would catch him. It was this love, a love beyond hunger, beyond fear, that kept Elie alive. But it was also the source of his greatest pain, because in Auschwitz, the stronger your love, the greater your suffering.